Thanks for checking out my micro drawings channel. Today I'm drawing Kelvin and Hobbes in their time machine, exploring and running into a couple dinosaurs. It is Thanksgiving week. Thanks for watching the video. Please subscribe and share with others if you haven't, and please hit that thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. So getting started here, I'm starting with Kelvin, and kind of hard to see there, but I've got his chin and his little nose and his glasses or goggles going. So I'm using a Copic Multiliner 0.03. I don't know if there's smaller pens out there. I'm guessing there are. If any of you know of any, let me know, because I'd love to check it out and to see if I can go a little bit smaller with the drawing. So I worked around his face after the goggles, and so I am looking at a reference of Bill Watterson's original, of course. And I like to start usually with facial features. That way if I goof up, I can just restart. And I haven't invested a ton of time into the rest of the picture. So in this case, I put one of Kelvin's fingers there, and then those fingers over the top of the box are actually from Hobbes. So he is going to be added. But first I'm putting in the rest of the box here. And then I need to get him started in reference to Kelvin. So with Hobbes, again, starting with a facial feature, started with his black nose. And then I'm building out from there using that initial black nose as reference. That helps me establish, the size of the goggles, the size of his mouth, the size of his chin, and so on. As far as the paper goes, I'm using a Canson Bristol XL 100 weight acid-free, very smooth tooth paper. That smooth tooth, think about it, if you can look at the side of the paper, it's not real jaggedy, it's smooth, and that makes it so there's not as much bleeding involved, and so that there's able to be a lot more control with your drawing utensil. So again, in this case, it's laying in the black and white drawing with my Copic Multiliner. And then later on, I'll grab my Copic sketch markers and use them to add the color. So continuing to work on Hobbes here. Not a lot shown of either of the characters, of course, because they're in the box. But still, I'm getting in Kelvin's arm, the top of his arm, his shoulder. And here I'm just adding one of the flaps to the box. And again, just lightly putting that in. And so almost done with them already, actually. There I'm trying to zoom in a little bit and focus. So forgive me for that earlier out of focus. The inside of the box, I'm actually just going to use that multiliner to basically darken that or color that in, I guess, with the black ink from that. There we go. And then here's the quarter for scale. I know we don't use coins a lot, but I just figure it's a pretty universal, point of reference or item for a reference scale. So you can see how small this is. You can see my little fingertips there, of course, and hopefully that gives you an idea as well. So I'm drawing here the head of the dinosaur. There'll be two of them. Their long necks will be overlapped a little bit. And right there, I'm putting the teeth in. It's just such fine detail. There's not a lot of space to get. In this case, I just drew the kind of more the vertical lines for the teeth. Didn't draw a line across the bottom because then I would have just had a black line because they're so small. I love Bill Watterson's style of drawing. It's a little looser, similar to Charles Schulz. My understanding is Bill Watterson was a huge fan of Charles Schulz, and in fact, that's where the red striped shirt for Kelvin comes from. It comes from Linus in the Peanuts or Charlie Brown comic strips that Schulz drew, so I just thought that was pretty interesting. So there, pretty much got the one dinosaur drawn in, and here's the other one, he's in the distance, of course, so he's a little bit smaller. And he's going to be tucked behind the front dinosaur's neck. And again, just drawing down here, trying to keep that neck pretty even as far as width. And then we're just going to see the top of that far dinosaur. So I'll just give a little bit of his back there. So again, getting pretty close to here. It'll be time to bring in those Copic sketch markers and just a little bit. Here's that quarter for scale. You can tell you can see it's not totally covering up the picture, but that's because it's more of a scene in this case. And that's a Copic the Copic sketch marker I've got going now. Sometimes I'll rotate the paper to keep that fine tip where I want it to be. And I'll try to show the cap of each one each time so you can see what colors I'm using. There you go, that's pale sepia. And the light suntan is going to be some of my shading or shadowing there on the box. You know, in this case, thinking of that light source to the upper left. So then the right side or bottom side is going to be a little more shaded. Here comes the cotton pearl. And again, I'm using the fine tip end of these Copic sketch markers. There's the cotton pearl for the face of Calvin. Not coloring in the goggles. There's the cadmium yellow. That'll be for Calvin's hair. Just lightly touching that in. There's just not enough room for much color there. And then here I'm grabbing the chrome orange, and that'll be for Hobbes. Again, I'm looking back to the reference, the original that Bill Watterson drew, and just again touching that in there on Mr. Hobbes. And here I'm rotating it because I want to get right up to that line without overlapping onto the box. And then I'm going to give a little bit, I don't know if these are little smoke clouds or kind of exhaust fumes from the box or just motion bubbles. I'm thinking them of more as exhaust fumes because something's powering that box around through the sky and through time. And now I'm going to get started on the dinosaur heads, and I'll take that pale yellow. I'll also grab a couple other yellows here, and then for the bodies I'll grab some warm and cool grays, green, a purple color right around the eyes. And so just a little bit of experimenting. And one thing you're not seeing is off to the side, I do have a piece of scratch paper that I'm testing out the colors and some of the blends together too before I put them on the final work that you're seeing in front of you. So here comes one of the grays. It's a warm gray. Sorry, it's out of focus there. There we go. That's going to lay in some background color on the long necks and body of the dinosaurs. So just kind of lightly putting that in there. And then I'll work my way down with the rest of that. And these dinosaurs kind of have a striping that goes perpendicular to the direction of the length of their neck. So I'll get that in as well. There's warm 3, the number 3 warm gray. It's a little, forgive me for maybe not having the right words, but more of a darker gray. So again, thinking of the light source from the upper left. So the right side or the bottom side is going to have a little more darkness to it. So again, just laying that out there. I'm putting the stripes in just ever so slightly. And I'll be working back and forth on this as far as foreground and background. And then later on, I'll come back with a Copic Multiliner and add some little more cross-hatching or details or with that Multiliner, that little pen that I started with. I've got the grays laid in there a little bit on the background. I'm going to use this lime green, kind of a greenish tint to it, to their body color. And just kind of overlaying that. Like I said, I'll kind of work back and forth as far as, you know, the underlying colors that I'm seeing versus the ones that are up on top. So in some of this time, like right now, I'm off to the side testing out some of the colors a little bit. These Copic sketch markers, there's a cool gray coming. The Copic sketch markers allow me to blend together. They're alcohol based. And that Copic Multiliner, the little black lining, that's Copic proof. Meaning, you know, once I've drawn that and it's dry, that's staying there. So the Copic sketch markers that I'm using aren't bleeding into that, or aren't, I guess, dissolving that at all. So very helpful in a situation like this where I'm trying to blend some colors together, but I'm not trying to make a mess on the coloring or the lines that I've already established. And here it's that little, it's prune, but that's going right around the eye of that near dinosaur. And adding a little bit into the lines on the neck. And again, I'll be coming back and blending those back in. But that's what I was seeing when I was looking at the original picture, was that there's some kind of a purple hue in there. So there's another cool gray, again, coming in there. With the rounded neck, you're going to see some darkness to the edges of it as well because it's rounding away from you. So there again, working on those stripes around the neck. Continuing to lay those in there. And there I'm using another cool gray, the one. And I'm using that a little bit like a blender here. So I'm just going over those. Blending those greens, purples, all the grays together. And I do have a colorless blender, but in this case I wanted to add a little bit with that cool gray, so I just used that as my blender. There's a cool gray number 3, and again, forgive my poor word usage, but the higher the number with the grays, the darker, or maybe it's more saturation. Not sure what the right word would be there. But in this case, I'm using that cool gray number 3 to give a little darker color to it. And then here I'm using that Copic Multiliner again to add some additional little details, some cross-hatching, a couple more little wrinkles in the body or the skin. You know, in that case, I darkened up a little bit on the bottom. So again, just kind of working along. I always loved it when Bill Watterson would add, the different characters to the cartoon, because here you've got Kelvin and Hobbes, and they're pretty much orange. For Hobbes, orange and white, and for Kelvin, pretty solid colors, and cartoony, but then the real characters, dinosaurs in this case, they just had a different look as far as the drawing as well. There's today's date, 11/23/21. If you've made it this far, thanks again for checking out the channel and watching. There's a ton of other videos on my playlist. Please watch, subscribe, and share. And happy Thanksgiving.